Hey guys, great to be here. Long way from the territory, but I want to start by acknowledging the Wiradjuri people and their elders past and present. I'm lucky enough to come from Larrakia country, but yesterday I was sitting on Yongle country, and it's a privilege just to be able to come this far on an aeroplane and come and have a chat about a few of the things that are happening up there. 5 years ago, I was lucky enough to get a couple of hours a week in Dondale to run a program called Balanced Choice, which I dreamt up. But I can't start to tell you that story until I tell you the story of how it all started. So just come on the journey with me for a little bit. I grew up in Melbourne. I actually grew up and went to a school here called Mount Evelyn Christian School. Now, the thing that was amazing about that school was I didn't learn Indonesian, I didn't learn Spanish, I didn't learn Chinese or Japanese. The language I learnt was Warlpiri. And in year 10, I went on a Central Australia trip to a place called Yuendamu. And I was told that my skin name was going to be Jabananka, which is now tattooed on my right arm here. And I carry it into the Dondale Detention Centre with me, I carry it into the adult prison with me, I carry it out on country with me, and it's just a privilege to have been connected to many communities through that. Now, I started at Mount Evelyn Christian School. Mum and Dad moved to the Gold Coast, got into year 10 up in Queensland, surfed for a while, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, lost like most 15, 16-year-olds, became a pizza driver, and then went, actually I'd like to be an actor. And so I went to uni and I studied theatre. On my first year at Griffith University studying theatre, my university lecturer Mike Foster said, "Hey Adam, you want to come up to Numinbah Correctional Centre? There's these 4 women that want to make this puppet show. Do you want to come and have a look at it?" "Oh yeah, sweet, I'll do that." So I rocked up there to the prison and I saw my lecturer engage and connect people in 30 seconds flat with some theatre activities. And I thought, oh, that's cool, I like that. Then, as my journey went on, I started to become an actor. I toured theatre shows with Queensland Arts Council, Queensland Theatre Company, and started to become part of programs that went to places like Arakoon, Mount Isa, Kowanyama, Palm Island. And what would happen is Queensland Theatre Company or Australian Theatre for Young People would fly me to these places. I'd do 2 weeks of workshop, take everybody on a sugar hit, and then I'd leave. And I hated it. I loved the community, but I hated the fact that I was to provide this service and then there was nothing afterwards. So I started to think a bit more, and I listened to a guy called Scott Rankin from an arts group called Big Heart talk. And he started to talk about you must live in the place if you're going to make the impact. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll keep that one in my head. Kept mucking around on the Gold Coast for a while, touring shows, went out to Tennant Creek. While I was in Tennant Creek, I was running workshops and I again saw how well it worked. Theatre isn't exactly what everybody wants to engage in though. If you walk into a room of young people and say, let's do a theatre workshop, generally you get this. What's this rubbish? So I then saw fitness was actually a pretty good connector. Because once you started saying, oh, let's get buff, let's get big, let's do some push-ups, people started to sort of go, oh yeah, let's do that. So we got down on the ground and we started working out. Now, the sidetrack of that, I moved then to Tennant Creek because I wanted to make a difference in that community. I fell apart in Tennant Creek, became an alcoholic, tried to run a gym and was an absolute mess. Drinking 3 bottles of wine a day. And I knew that my life was in a pretty bad place when my mum and dad had come out with me, my fiancée and my dog were out in Tennant Creek with me. Mum and dad left. My fiancée left with my daughter, and now the dog decided to run under the fence one day. That was it. That was the moment I knew it was all falling over in Tennant Creek. But I thought to myself at that point, what am I going to do? Am I going to move forward in my life, or am I going to stay here on this couch? And driving back from Alice Springs with a mate, my mate was driving the car. We got to a place called the Devil's Marbles, and we hit a cow. And the cow comes straight through that windscreen and then luckily went over the top of the car. And I say to this day that cow could have kept coming right through and crushed my head. But for some reason, I was meant to keep going. So I moved up to Darwin after that And every time I drive past Dondale, a little voice in my head said, you need to do something in there. You need to do something in there. And so I put everything together that I knew. Theatre, fitness and hope. Now my uncle, he's a doctor of future studies at Swinburne. He's left the role now. But he would talk to me and he'd say, Adam, your theatre stuff that you're doing and your fitness and everything, you're using choice theory and hope theory. And here's a couple of hope scales and you can measure hope. And I started to see how I could really start to underpin the work with hope. And so I'm lucky enough now to have 6 staff running around with me in the territory, and we do 40 minutes of fitness and 20 minutes of getting fit on the inside. Now, how do you get fit on the inside? What's a chin-up look like on the inside? What's a push-up look like on the inside? Well, I do a quote of the day. I bring in a quote and we talk about life. So, how about I give you 3 of my favourite quotes? Is that cool? 3 of my favourite quotes. One of my favourites, and this probably needs to be spoken about in regards to what's happened in Western Australia recently to our youth and our young people. Every storm runs out of rain. Every storm runs out of rain. And I say that and we sit and I give him the quote. And Arthur Moses, who's the head of the Legal Society, he came and looked into the prison cells to make sure that it was all okay in there at Dondale. And he saw all these quotes. He said, who brings you those quotes? And they shared about balanced choice. And now Arthur regularly gets me to go and speak to his lawyers and his staff because everyone needs hope. There's probably people in this room who need to know that every storm runs out of rain. And that when the rain finishes, usually something comes out in the sky. What is it? A rainbow. Sometimes the beautiful stuff comes after the hard stuff. Yeah? And so that's the way we talk. And then one of my other favourite quotes, I've got a couple listed here. I'll just go through my phone and flick through them, Northern Territory style. If I could give you one thing... Oh no, sorry, I'm making that up. But it basically goes along the line, I can't find it, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to give you my version of it. If I could give you one thing, I'd give you my eyes, so you could see how special you really are to me. And I say that. And I say sometimes to the group, I love you. And I'm proud of you. And when we're pushing out 600 push-ups, I tell them I'm proud of them. And for some of those kids, it's the first time someone said, I'm proud of you. It's the first time that someone older has given them a tap on the head and said, you're doing amazing. And part of the reason I do that is I remember when I first went to the gym when I was a kid and how scary all the machines looked. And I didn't know what to sit under. And then there'd be a guy or a girl who'd come over to me and say, hey Adam, just come here mate, just come here, I'll put you under here, I'll spot you. I've got you, you're safe now. And they teach me how to get big and strong. But one of my other favourite quotes is, and this is the one that I wrote for the kids recently, was, I hope that when you look in the mirror and you see your 6-pack, that you can actually then look in your eyes and know deep down that the person you look at, you love. Or the eyes, something like that. It was much better than what I'm doing now, but it was better. I'll give you a copy of it later. But basically what it was the muscles don't matter. I say that all the time. I say, you look ripped, you look fit. But there's a lot of people out here who are happy, who are looking strong and fit, but aren't happy on the inside. How do we find that happiness? And so as I further do this work, I then realise that Balanced Choice has actually become an advocacy group for young people. I write letters to the court all the time saying this young person has set a goal for himself. I really believe that young person's going to get there. We'll support them along the way and we put in processes to make sure that they are okay when they get out of Dondale. Does everybody in the room know what Dondale is first? Yeah, put your hand up if you do. So it's our youth juvenile detention centre, a bit like Parkville you got here. Is it? Yep. Yeah. And so basically there's kids in there locked up from the age of 10 through to 18, and on their 18th birthday, their birthday present is to go to the big house, which is horrible. And we have just tried to get our program across to the adult prison to be able to work in there with the kids, because what I see in the space that's really lacking is through care. We build these influential adults around these young people, but then we stop it because they're 18. Oh, you can't do that program anymore. Well, I'm sorry, I actually think we need to stay alongside the kids until they're ready to drop us off. Because kids will let you know when they're ready to fly. And guess what? They might fall, but guess where they'll come straight when they fall? They'll come straight back to you. And they'll send you a beautiful message saying, hey, I was doing really well, but I stuffed up this time, but I'll get it right this time, Adam. I know I will. And that's the stuff. Yeah. So balanced choice isn't just in the jails now. It's also in the schools. It's also in community. And I just want to tell you a few stories from community that'll just help inform the work a little bit. Because last time I was in Dondale, there was 100% Aboriginal kids in there. Did you hear that? 100%. Not 90, not 80, not 70, but 100% Aboriginal kids incarcerated in Dondale. And you know what? I reckon our society's got a hell of a lot to answer for that. And if adults behaved like adults, then kids could be kids, and it wouldn't be that way. And so what I'm really trying to do is get to understand where the kids come from and just be a part of giving more hope, and also working with the legal services. I was in Gun community, I was out there a few weeks ago. I was also there in Yirrkala yesterday. But I want to tell you the first time I ever went to this community. I got there and I actually had to go and sit with the TO and get approval. Now, the way you get approval is you have to meet eyes and he has to see that my intentions are good. Now, I don't know how that happens, but I'm just open and I see everybody as a library and I just want to spend time in libraries and I want to learn, and that's my heart and that's all I want to do. And that seems to carry, because then he said, yeah, Adam, you're right to come. He says, but you're going to come and sit with me down at the hollow tree. So we went for a walk down to the hollow tree and he said, let me tell you a little story, Adam. He said, there were these three cockies. Now have a look here on this pole. And there were three cockies there. He goes, those cockies, they walk around and they look around here and they look around there and they look around over there. He says, you see those two mice? I said, yeah, I see those mice. He goes, those mice, he said, they run around and they dig holes. They dig holes here, dig holes there, dig holes there. He said, you see those cockies, they're busy looking at everybody else's stuff. And those little mice, they're running around spreading gossip about what those cockies are seeing. And you see that dog there? That dog dies if it doesn't do the right thing. Oh, cool, I've got this really cool Aboriginal story. I'm going to go tell all my mates. I'm stoked here. This is going to be wicked. And then I went home and let it filter in. While you're out here, Adam, don't go looking around at everybody else's business and gossiping about it, or you're dead to us. Boom. Got me in the heart straight away. What a beautiful way to share story and to pass on a beautiful message, which when I go out to community, it's not my place. It's my place to go and learn from people who can teach me. But I see every person in this room as a library. You're a library. You're a library. You're a library. You're a library. And I want to spend time with all those libraries. Because the worst part is, libraries close one day and you can't get the information anymore. And I was lucky enough to sit with my granddad, who lived to 99 3/4, and get lots of cool stories. But I just love gathering more stories as I go. Do I have much more time? Have I got a couple more minutes or? Couple more. Beautiful. Okay, I just want to touch a little bit on two other things that have happened through the program, because I think, and then I'll share something that happened with Menzies Health Group up there recently. But I want to tell you, one time I was working in the prison and we were doing job interviews, right? So I used the theatre to role play life in the program. So I said, okay, what's your dream job? What would you like to do one day? And one of the fellas goes, oh, Adam, I'd like to, drive boats. Okay, cool. We'll do a job interview. And so I pretended to be the boss. We talked together. That was good for him. Now, there's this one guy in that group who'd never spoken before. So he'd been in for 2 years and he'd never spoken. And one of the guards thought it was funny to go, hey, pick him. And I was like, no, that's wrong. We can't do that. That's a shame job. We can't do that. And he goes, no. He's going to have a go. So I was completely embarrassed. But I remember seeing on this young fella's wall a North Melbourne football poster. And so he came in, he sat down at the job interview, and I went, now as the North Melbourne footy coach, we've been going a bit ordinary lately, and we need a little bit of help. What do you reckon we do? And he leans forward and he goes, so Adam, what I reckon you should do is the forward line. So he'd been in prison for 2 years and he'd never spoken, but all of a sudden he felt like he could speak. Now after that role play, he didn't speak again for another 3 weeks. But we created a safe space. And that's our job. The gap between the adults and the kids is too big. The gap between the community I was in yesterday and this room, I reckon, is too big. And how are we going to close it? And I reckon sitting together on country, learning, will be a pretty good starting point. Now, I just want to close with, we had a youth summit up in the Territory 2 weeks ago, and they asked me to work with 30 kids to give their perspective about what needs to happen for health in the Territory. So we had all the adults get up at the start and talk about renal heart failure, kidneys, we had diabetes, we had the whole lot. Rheumatic heart fever, And so all these very important topics got spoken about. Then we asked the kids to tell us what they thought, and not one of those topics came up from the kids. This is a declaration here of what the kids thought were important. And I just want to share it with you guys. Number 1 on the list was a healthy mind is just as important as a healthy body. Number 2 was sexual and reproductive health concerns for all people. The third was the health sector across the Northern Territory must commit to meeting people at their point of need, not at their point of crisis. And the fourth one was the above priorities cannot be addressed without confronting the reality of the climate emergency. And they're expanded in that document, but that's what's important to our kids. And the problem that I'm seeing in the space with all of the work at the moment is we've lost relationship, we've lost connection, and the gap between the people making policy and the ones on the ground who are actually rolling it out or receiving it is so wide that it doesn't match up. And we as adults must get better. That's it.